Hi, everybody. You are listening to the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica Valli, and I'm joined today by Ali Press in London. Welcome, Ali.
Hi there. Hello.
So we this is a second episode really on I wanted to do more about sobriety and being neurodivergent, and Ali reached out to me and I was like, oh, you're perfect. I'd love to kind of hear your story and stuff. So just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do first of all, and then I want to hear your story.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Ali. I live in South London. I work as a counsellor and a coach, and within that, the areas that I specialise in are neurodivergence and changing your drinking, and then also the intersection of changing your drinking whilst neurodivergence, and all the things that go around with living well whilst neurodivergent. I quit drinking, it's going to be 8 years in April of next year, which feels like such a long time now. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your drinking story then.
Wow. So I started in my teens. I was probably about 14, something like that. And, sort of back in those days, it was a bit of fun. It was a bit naughty. It was like escaping from home and going to the pub with my mates. 14, I've gone to the pub. And sort of that sort of continued through 16, 18. But I think even at 18, probably actually before then, 17 and a half, I knew that my drinking was above average. It was certainly more than my mates when I was hanging out with them. And I remember somebody suggesting to me when I was probably 17 and a half, I was 18, shortly before I went to university, that I might have a problem with my drinking, that I might be drinking too much, which kind of sent my brain into an overdrive of panic, because how could that be? I didn't want to be that. What was I doing wrong? And I also up went my defences, like, oh no, not me, blah blah blah. Except it was me, and that was how life continued off through my 20s, 30s. I remember arriving at university. I was painfully shy, naturally introverted anyway, but all of a sudden I'm in this new environment, new people, don't know what to do with myself, got to make a load of friends. So I clung probably even harder to booze then whilst I was doing it, because that was sort of my crutch, I guess, to provide that social lubrication, to show that I was a kind of a fun, party-oriented person to be around, which I wasn't. Before I went to university, but I was trying to find my place, I guess. And it was actually in my second year of university, so I was probably 20 when I quit drinking for the first time. But it wasn't a success, and I carried on drinking like a pillock for the better part of 27 years in total, which is a lot. So there was another quitting attempt when I was about 30. Again, not successful. I lasted around 3 months that time, which was phenomenal, but also the drawback, I must be all right if I can manage 3 months. Not too much wrong with me. And anyway, I don't want to be one of those weirdo non-drinker types, and with all of those kind of stereotypes that go around with people who don't drink. But yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't fun. And it was kind of bringing an awful lot of guilt, regret, and paranoia into all kinds of different areas of my life. And then I got to 41 and I was like, I just cannot do this anymore. So I had to work out what to do.
Well, so are you Gen X? I think you're Gen X.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure what that means, because whenever my kid mentions it, I have to Google it and work out which one I am.
I think you're Gen X. When were you born?
70s.
Yeah, you're Gen X. And whenever I have a client from the UK who's Gen X, it's like, you don't need to tell me about your drinking because I already know what you're drinking.
Yeah.
Because we drank in the 90s, right? And that's when we were actively encouraged to binge drink and drink like the boys. And that was all completely. We normalized abnormal drinking. We are the generation that normalized abnormal. I was going in the pubs at 14. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. And like other people in the media at the time, women saying, "Yeah, this is the way forward. Let's drink like the boys, party like the boys, drink hard." Yeah. Gosh, that was a wild time.
And it's really hard in our culture when it's so presented as like everyone's doing it, it's the best way to have fun, like you're missing out. Like it's really hard to be that person who doesn't drink. So what finally kind of pushed you over the edge? What led you to sobriety?
So I was getting to the point, like with my daily consumption, I was drinking a lot from whenever I got home till whenever I passed out, wake up the next morning feeling utterly horrendous, trying to go about my day, getting to the point where I was unable to function before sort of midday, something like that. I'd look at my emails on my phone or my laptop and I'd be like, oh, I cannot face this. But I also felt absolutely trapped. And probably one of the worst things about that feeling was that it was a trap of my own making. I was living this daily nightmare, day in, day out, and I just could not find a way out of it because I knew from my quitting attempt in my 30s how dangerous going cold turkey would be, because it is. I also felt completely unable to manage my drinking on my own because, if anything, it was escalating. I had sneaky drinks hidden in the house, and I'd sort of pop off in the evening to check my email and have a few glugs out of the bottle of wine I had stashed in my office, things like that. And feeling so trapped, not knowing what to do, and then also feeling that huge amount of guilt about what I was doing, all of those feelings of shame going on in there as well. I started to think about ending things for myself, because if I can't stop drinking like this and I hate it so much, what's the way out, since I clearly seem to be unable to quit? If we end everything, I say me, then that's it. I don't have to live this awful life anymore. But on reflection, like when I look back now, I think, wow, what were you doing? How did you even get to that place? But at the time, it just sort of seemed like a potential logical outcome, because I was drinking a lot. I was waking up in the night, on the nights that I drank, with awful sleep apnea. On the nights when I hadn't drunk, I was waking up with my heart pounding out of my chest, sweating through my PJs, all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, well, if the amount I drink isn't going to get me, then possibly the shock and the post, like the acute withdrawal part, is going to get me. So something is going to get me here. So, if I take that route out, if I commit suicide, then that's it, it's all over. But I wanted to live, I wanted to carry on, I wanted to live better, and I didn't know what the future would look like. I basically had to take that step off the cliff into the air and hope that something worked for me.
That's really powerful. I got to the same point, and I think lots of people do. I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to live. I just had no clue how to live, because me in charge, it was an absolute, it got me where I was, which is the same place. So how did you get sober?
So I was in the barber shop that I used to go to in Hackney, Barberette, and next to where the benches were, where you sat and waited, there were some flyers, and one of those was a Club Soda flyer. And I know that you know Club Soda. So Club Soda are the mindful drinking movement. There's a base in the UK, but also operate globally. They had a flyer for Queers Without Beers in there. So over the course of maybe 3 or 4 haircuts, I'm a regular attendee of the barbershop. I was sitting there eyeing up the flyer, trying not to be seen looking at the flyer, bearing in mind in the barbershop there was me, Clara, who was cutting somebody's hair, and the person whose hair she was cutting. 3 of us. They were busy. I was minding my own business, but absolutely terrified that somebody might see me, pick up one of these flyers and go, oh, you've got a drink problem. But anyway, I eventually mustered up the courage to grab one and stuff it in my bag.
We've moved on. You weren't worried that people were like the queer bit. It was the beer bit.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Yeah. So I found one, took it home, looked at it, and they had the Facebook group on there. I joined their mailing list, and I also signed up for one of their courses, because back in those days, I still had this idea that I just needed to moderate my drinking, and I was looking for whatever magic pill there was for moderating. So I signed up for this 8-week course of how to moderate your drinking. But yeah, I'm not cut out for that. So I spent probably about 6 months in the group, learning stuff, connecting with people, working out what I needed to do, trying it, failing, trying it again, until the point where I woke up on the 10th of April in 2017. I thought, absolutely not. This has to end. I don't know what the future looks like, but this has to end.
That's incredible. It's just, isn't it amazing? They will be so pleased to hear that. Like, just that one flyer made such a massive difference that I know they'll just be tickled pink with that.
Yeah, it saved my life.
Wow. Now, I'm really interested in then how you discovered that you were actually neurodivergent and the relationship there, because I think I've come across a lot of clients who are medicating themselves because they are neurodivergent and they can't really manage social situations as well as what other people seem to. So tell me about that step. So you accept, you kind of get into sobriety, you get it, then what happens?
Yeah, so you know the sort of trajectory of sobriety, and you go through those first 30 days feeling like from totally shit to feeling an awful lot better and being able to get out of bed in the morning and feel good about stuff. I was maybe 3 or 4 months in, and I was having a chat with a personal trainer that I was going to work with about dyspraxia, which is also known as developmental coordination disorder.
Can you describe dyspraxia so people know what it is?
Yeah, so dyspraxia is a condition, it's a neurodivergent condition that affects things in your body, it affects your movements. I always used to call it as being a bit like dyslexia of the arms and legs, but which is there's like a very kind of layperson, very simple terms view. So for me, that means like using keys is a little bit more tricky. If I'm looking through, I don't know, I don't use cash so much anymore because who does since the COVID pandemic? I'd be looking through cash in my hand and having trouble picking out individual coins and things like that. So I knew that something wasn't quite right there. But when I started looking more into it to go and work with Monica, the PT, I also discovered that it has all these kind of cognitive effects and things around memory and fogginess and a little bit of planning kind of stuff, executive function. I was like, this is interesting. And the only reason that I was kind of going down that route was a good decade, it must be more than that previously. I was in the car park at Sainsbury's in Uxbridge with my girlfriend, just driving my trolley back to the trolley park. And she said to me, I think you're dyspraxic. She was a head teacher. I was like, okay, don't know what this means. I'm not entirely happy about this, but okay. And never really gave it another thought and just kind of carried on. And when I was looking at how I was doing having quit drinking compared to other people in the group, they were living these really great lives. They were bouncing out of bed. It's like this real cliche, 5 a.m, out of bed, going for a run kind of thing. And talking about these great boosts in brain power, how switched on they were. And I was like, well, on a minute, where's mine? I want this boost in brain power. So then I started to put the pieces together between the dyspraxia and not having this. Went for an assessment, and yes, that turns out to be one of the conditions that I have. But as time went by, not when I say time, it sounds like years, it was more like weeks and months, I started to realise that that didn't really fully explain my experience of the world, and why sort of the way I did things and went about things and was affected and impacted by things wasn't sort of the same as other people. Um, and what I was doing was comparing my neurodivergent self with their neurotypical others, or people that I perceived to be neurotypical. So I started looking into ADHD, thinking this might give me more answers. Yes, if I look at a list of traits, characteristics, and so on from ADHD, I can recognise quite a lot of those in me. Joined the very, very long queue for an assessment, had an assessment, went off down that route. And yes, ADHD is in there. But all the while in the back of my mind, I was thinking this still doesn't explain what I think might be going on for me. It doesn't give me all of the answers that I'm looking for. There's a lot still unexplained, but I also had this little voice in the back of my head going, possibly autism, possibly autism. But I pretty much wrote it off, because a lot of the sort of the stereotypes around autism are a lot to do with young boys, and liking trains a lot and flappy hands and that kind of thing. And I didn't recognise myself in any of those descriptions, but I was experiencing more of those kind of characteristics of autism and thinking, might be me. The more I looked into it, the more it became really clear that actually that is what's going on. And one of the most helpful books that I found on the subject is by Sarah Hendricks, and it's called Women and Girls on the Autism Spectrum, or Autistic Spectrum. In there, she's interviewed a whole bunch of different people. There's like little vignettes from her casework, from their clients and so on, about their experiences of autism. And I could see so much resonance and parallel stuff in there for me with what was going on. I was like, yeah, that seems to be what's going on. And then kind of incorporating that into my life, accepting that, has made such a big difference, because now when I look at the way I go about things and how I am in the world, the things that I need in order to run well, then yeah, totally, knowing that I'm autistic means that I don't feel the guilt and the shame and so on, because I'm not doing it in the same way that other people do. I'm doing it in the way that works for me, and that is totally okay. Yeah, so the more I found out, the better I got at being who I am, I guess.
That's so interesting. What kind of, because knowing and understanding, because I'm dyslexic, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia in university in my first year when I was failing, and it's changed my life.
Yeah.
Because once you know, and then you know how to, like now I know, I've written 3 books, like I now know how to write.
Yeah.
For me, and it's going to be different for someone else. Like I can't, I can say what I want to say, but I can't say what I want to say and spell things and have the right grammar and sentence structure at the same time. So I have to say what I want to say, and often like it's like the spelling's really bad, and then I have to go back and do the other bit, the spelling and all that kind of stuff. And once before, I just felt like I was stupid, and I knew I wasn't. But knowing, it's such a release. It's so, and then it's like I have to do this way. So what things did you find where you're like, oh, I just need to do this way?
Yeah, so one of them is around looking after my spoons and my energy. So just kind of going about in the world and going on the train, commuting, that kind of thing is exhausting. I find that because it takes me an hour and a half to get into town where I'm working at the moment as a counsellor. By the time I get there, I'm like, oh, I fancy a nap. So it's things around organising my travel time so that I don't just count it as a sort of dead time. It is actually something that's going to wear me out. Things around writing as well. I don't have a dyslexia diagnosis or anything, but I very much recognise what you're saying about thinking, writing, but the sort of like the spelling doesn't come out right. If I'm trying to take notes on a call or something like that, and I pick up my pencil and I start writing, utter garbage comes out. The first letter will be great, and then the rest will just be a squiggly line, and I can't focus on that and focus on what I'm doing. So I now use voice notes an awful lot more. So I record what I'm doing. I use Otter. And then that gives me a transcript, that gives me a place to start with fiddling with stuff. And it's the same with planning my time. I absolutely have to put everything in my calendar and refer to my calendar as almost like my to-do list. So I know what I'm doing, I know how to fit stuff in, what time I've got to go, and I don't know, my haircut or whatever it is I'm doing. So yeah, it takes quite a lot more thinking, I suppose. And I just want to come back with something you said about socializing as well, and that kind of anxiety that goes around with it, and how I used to drink to kind of ease the socializing. Now I just give myself a break. If I don't want to go, I don't. If I'm there and I want to leave, I do. And that actually is one of the most important things that Laura from Club Soda taught me. And that was to treat myself with consent. If I'm not enjoying myself and I'd rather go home, just go home. So I do.
It's so simple, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. The amount of times we kind of force ourselves to go through with things because we feel like we should, or there's some kind of external pressure on us to do something, when actually our natural inclination is to not do it or to do something different. And it's about listening to that, listening more to what you need, analysing these kind of experiences and thinking, did it work for me? Did it not work for me? Where did it go wrong? What was it like? Who was around me? And then using that to kind of forward plan new adventures.
Can you look back now and see that so much of your drinking was about trying to medicate this stuff that you didn't know what it was, and just trying to navigate the world? How alcohol was you trying to navigate the world with this different brain?
Yeah, I think that is quite a big part of what was going on with me. I mean, there was a lot of other things I was drinking out of my mind as well, and using that to numb those kind of horrible emotions and memories and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, some of it was just on the day-to-day getting through life type thing. I think this is also where my ADHD comes into play, and I know this now, is that if you say to me, right, you've got to do this thing at 3:00, all I can think about is, I've got to do the thing at 3:00. I've got to do the thing at 3:00. Is it time to go and sit down? Because I've got to do the thing at 3:00. It's exactly the same if you give me a drink or something to eat or a task to do. I have to do it immediately. Otherwise, I'm completely consumed by the have to do the thing thoughts. And I think it was the same with drinking. If you gave me a drink to drink, my job is then to drink the drink. So I drink the drink, and then the glass is empty, so I get another drink to drink, and then off it goes, kind of snowballs. And then there are the other things as well, where I was drinking to feel more comfortable in settings that I just don't really feel very comfortable in, and using the alcohol as a way of helping me mask that discomfort and feel like I'm having fun and I'm joining in like everybody else is.
So interesting, isn't it? It must feel so freeing now.
Hugely freeing. Yeah. I often say that, like, the more you know about yourself, the better you get at being yourself. And this is totally it. Yeah.
What do you work with this client group, do you?
Yes, I work with neurodivergent people and people who want to change their drinking. Yeah.
So how do you approach your work? How do you work with people? I'm curious.
I take a very, very individualized approach, which I'm sure you know as a coach is really important to whatever you're doing. but I factor in things like how neurodivergence might affect people, because I've got an idea in my head of some of the things that, like the range of possibilities that could happen. But every single person who has neurodivergence is different to every single other person with neurodivergence. It's really common for people to talk about my autism, my ADHD, and how it impacts them. And that's the part that I want to get into. It's, what are your stressors? What are the triggers? What are the times of day that it's really hard for you to do stuff? Like, what's your worst time of day? What's your best time of day? And then start to look at the different domains of people's lives where neurodivergence impacts them, because it will impact everywhere. It's not like you can just unplug it, pop it on the shelf and not be neurodivergent for 4 hours. It just doesn't work like that. So it's more about understanding what the impacts are and then what you can do about it. Because in the same way, I can't take my neurodivergence out and pop it over there. I can't change it either, but I can change things in my environment to make things work better for me. And that's also what I bring to my client work.
That's so interesting, because it's really about knowing yourself, and we can't know ourselves when we're drinking, because like you were describing, like when you just feel like crap, you're just trying to get through the day. You can't know yourself.
Yeah.
But it is about, it is about, I mean, I'm thinking like, I've noticed I'm 52. No, I'm not. I'm 51. I'm going to be 52. I've noticed as I've got older, like I was just saying to, I'm kind of working a bit less, and I'm also finishing by around 3. I'm not like and I'm really trying to be strict about taking Fridays off. And it's just about, I'm just knowing myself. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not really much use after that time. I get up early, I get the work done, my kids, I'm busy. I'm tired. So I don't schedule clients after that time really anymore. Like, you know, and back in the day when I was in my 30s, I would have like 2 evenings a week that I would work with clients, but I absolutely do not do that now. So it's like, in many ways, it's just knowing yourself. Like, this is what I need for my brain, but also this is what I need for me at this part of my life.
Yeah, for your brain and your body. You can't disconnect them. And exactly, I mean, I'm 49, and as I've got older, and particularly in the non-drinking years, I've learned so much more about myself and what I need in order to go about my business well day to day. And a bit like you're saying, I don't schedule clients late in the evening. I don't really want to work beyond 7 o'clock because I know my brain will be mush by then. I don't schedule things early in the morning, because if you get me out of bed that early, my brain will be mush until I've had a little power up and a coffee to get myself going. And I need downtime. I need time where, okay, I can think about my client work. I can start look at plans at where we're going, but I also just need to watch cat videos.
I said that to my favorite show is the Great British Bake Off, and I said to my husband, it's therapy. I need to watch baking.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's like whatever it is that kind of works for you. My partner really likes speeded up videos of people handcrafting cards with these kind of machines where they stuff the paper through and it imprints different patterns and so on. So if that's what helps you to relax, then go for it.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I feel that we've done a lot with beginning to understand neurodivergence, certainly when we were at school. But I still feel like I'm learning that we're still pretty new in the sober recovery space. I look back, I ran and worked in a rehab like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, in my early 30s. And I look back and there's so much I didn't know. One thing I didn't know that I'm learning a lot about now is really realizing how women's hormones affect them, and not really understanding that to the degree that I needed to, that day 8 of sobriety for a woman is different from day 8 for a man, because of hormonal changes that women go through. But also now looking back, like the not understanding really about neurodivergence. So this is a continuing, like we're still really learning. And again, recovery is very much about groups, and that's what often neurodivergent people struggle with, is groups. What's your sort of suggestion on that?
Yeah, I mean,
Just going back to Queers Without Beers, I think
yeah,
someone else is, I can't remember what happened with that, but again, just this, it's so great to find your people, isn't it?
yes, totally. And that was my experience of finding Club Soda. There were my people, because I was struggling on my own, feeling like one of the worst people ever to have kind of walked the planet, because I couldn't manage my drinking. I felt horrible about what I was doing. I joined Club Soda, and then all of a sudden there were a bunch of people there like me. I always described it as a bit like being the only gay person in the village and not knowing any other gay people, and not really knowing, like, you're different to the other people, but you don't connect with them in the same way. But once I found the people in Club Soda, I was like, yeah, these people are they're my tribe. One of the things that was helpful for me was that there was the online group, so I could interact with it in ways that felt comfortable to me without being overwhelmed by the whole people everywhere kind of thing. Because if I were to go to a face-to-face group meeting, like, everybody might be sober or changing their drinking, so again, people like me, but then I would have to talk to them and make small talk and interact, which, as time went by, that got better. But what I needed then was like a certain level of anonymity. I needed this, like, a sense of safety and like distance between me and the world in order to feel like I could interact in the ways that I want to. And still now I find online groups way more comfortable places than face-to-face groups, for exactly that reason, because it's like, I just used to think I didn't have the right social skills. I know what to do. It just makes me really, really uncomfortable doing it. So I try to avoid it. But connecting with people like me, other people who are neurodivergent, I don't think I know so many neurodivergent and sober people, although that is starting to change as people who quit drinking are starting to realise more about their neurodivergence. But yeah, community is so important. Where any area where you feel like you're a bit on the outside, like you're drinking over and above what other people are, it's so important to be able to connect with people like you.
Yeah, it really is. Ali, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I've learned every time I speak to someone with a different, perception and expertise, I learn something. And I really hope that this helps people who are beginning to recognize themselves and maybe their struggles with sobriety. I think my big takeaways were, we have to really know ourselves and give consent and permission to ourselves about what's for us and what's not for us. And that's a process, don't always get it right. But it's a process, and you can only do that if you've got your mind is clear to begin to know yourself and be able to acknowledge these things and that kind of stuff. So
I completely agree. And it's sort of back to like the thing I said around the more you know about yourself, the better you get at being yourself.
Wonderful. Can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, so you can find my website. If you go and Google Ali Press, you'll see me pop up there on the page. So that's my website. In there you'll find bits and pieces about what I do. There's a blog in there, and there's also a contact form if you want to get in touch. And I'm quite active on LinkedIn these days because I quite like hanging out in there. It's a different sort of social network to things like Facebook. But that's where you'll also find me, so you can drop me a DM in LinkedIn if you see.
Brilliant. Okay, wonderful. And we'll put those in the show notes. Thank you so much, Ali, and thank you everyone for listening. Let me know if what you thought, what your thoughts are, and if you've recognized yourself or anyone you know. And we'll be back next week with another great episode. Take care, everybody.